Welcome everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Centre up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about this year-long research project that we did. And one of the keys to the research was not to bring any sort of preconceived ideas into the research, but to allow all of the data and everything to come from the participants, and for the themes and the hypotheses and everything else to emerge actually from all of the data. And we did some statistical analysis. In that case, that's bringing a preconceived hypothesis. But for most of the research, it was to see what was going to come out just from what the participants told us, and whether that was backed up by the professionals' opinions and family, all the other stuff. But the idea was this stuff to emerge. And one of the things that emerged was this idea that the participants felt that if they were going to live this good life and get over drugs, that they needed to develop some goals that were personally meaningful to them. And this is kind of interesting because we've talked before on the online program about this idea of developing goals that are coming from the person, and the fact that our research, from the research emerged the same idea was kind of interesting, and gives us some sense of, some confirmation of the ideas that we use in our therapy. But at any rate, this idea that they would produce goals, and this was, again, one of those remarkable things that for almost 100% of the participants in our study started recognizing that really, I've got to think beyond just the next little while. I got to think down the road for 2 or 3 years, maybe. Or maybe right now I don't really know what I want to do, but if I keep working on it, I'll figure it out. And it seems to be working in with the idea that once they got a better sense of who they were as people, what was important to them, their strengths, their weaknesses, things like that, then these goals seem to come much more naturally. It was almost intuitive on the part of the participants. And so they started paying attention to the goals. So for example, if they wanted to be a good father, then they would start putting energy into that. And it might be something along the lines of their boss wants them to work overtime on the weekend, and they said, normally they would, but now they would reconsider that because it may interfere with, for example, with being a good father. If they wanted to pursue a subject at school, then that became the focus. It wasn't a matter of coming up with 87 brilliantly argued excuses about why they shouldn't even apply to school. It became a matter of, just going and doing it. If they wanted to learn how to go dancing, they just went and did it, right? But these goals, right? This idea of pursuing something that was meaningful to them. Now, we know in psychology that all of us get goals given to us by society. That's just the way things are. But it's important for human well-being. This is one of the things that this very remarkable psychologist Richard Ryan and his colleague Edward Deci came up with. Yes, everybody has these goals imposed upon them, but the key is to make the goals your own. And once they become your own, then they're coming from within you. So it's this idea of internalizing these goals. For example, if I'm driving along the road, well, I may feel like I want to go 100 miles an hour, but as I recognize as a citizen of Canada and in British Columbia that I'm part of a social contract we have, and so I recognize it's a public road, there's going to be lots of different people on the road, and so I will do my part in order to contribute to the safety and efficiency of the public roadway. So I don't feel that it's like all these police officers are just waiting for me to come around the corner or anything. No, I don't feel like that at all. It's more like I accept that this is my contribution to the safety and efficiency of the roadway. And so now it's become internalized because I've fully accepted it. And Ryan and Deci had said that this is actually fundamental to well-being, because if you don't internalize these outside ideas coming in, then really you won't be very happy doing stuff. So Yes, all of this stuff that we get from the outside world coming in, but the key is to internalize it so that we personally believe it and it's coming from within us. And that's what why these goals are so important, is that we know from research that if people don't have these internal goals and start pursuing them, they'll be much less contented and much less fulfilled than they otherwise could be. So maybe if my goal is to go grow my hair long, wear sandals, make pottery at the beach, maybe I should consider doing that. Of course, I have to measure that against, being a husband and a father and all that stuff. But if this is my calling, right, maybe it's important for me to follow it, because if I don't, who knows? Maybe I won't be happy. Or as Eric Klinger, another fine psychologist, says, that those who settle for second best generally run into trouble. Second best is not a good way of living your life. You always go for what you truly want. And then recognize, of course, we can't all get our goals. That's obvious. So I wanted to be an NHL player up until I was a young teenager, and it became very obvious to me that that wasn't happening. So I have to change goals. And that is just part of living. But it's to pursue these personally meaningful goals. And why all this is so important, these things that we've been talking about on the online program, is this has everything to do with living a meaningful and purposeful life. And this idea that addiction looks like, according to our research, it is a response to living a life that's lacking personal meaning, living a life where I really don't feel in control of things, living a life that I sort of look around and say, this is it. All of this typical stuff, this external orientation to the world that a lot of addicts have, and then how do you exist in that world? Well, you get intoxicated. So maybe the key to recovery is if you could know yourself and based on knowing yourself, come up with goals, things that you're passionate about, then maybe the purpose of drugs goes away, and maybe that's the key to recovery. And there's a growing amount of research that seems to be backing this up, that abstinence may be the byproduct of living this personally meaningful life, or at least on the way to living it. Anyway, these are very interesting ideas that we've discovered from our research. So we'll be back next time with another program.